mention the Untold Titanic tale. Well, I think we sort of interrupted, when my boy Tony has to change these tapes over. He's very clever, quite a brilliant young boy. It seems that, as you can imagine the picture there, they were all sitting around the big fireplace in the security, the safety of that antiquity, that house, 44 Red Rose Terrace, the big fireplace, and there was a very Reverend Father Burns in his corner, and all the rest of the ladies and gentlemen. I don't remember very much who they all were, but Daddy was in the center there telling his story. And we kids were, of course, allowed to have a little ginger beer as we sat there listening, but, well, I suppose Daddy had more or less finished it. It seems that he landed in Halifax. Well, then, we told him then something that he didn't know. Maybe this is what we told him influenced him in the story. In other words, never to tell the story again. Mother said, Daddy, the first news we got that you were saved was from New York. Well, Daddy said, well, that couldn't be. I was hundreds of miles away from New York. Well, the first report was Mathew Hannah and New York. They named the boat. I think it was the Carpathia. I don't remember. Then, of course, Daddy said, well, that couldn't be. Well, then, later on, another report came in from Halifax. Mathew Hannah. Saved. In fair condition. In fact, fair condition in Halifax. Well, Daddy was astonished. Then Mother said, well, we got your cable from Halifax, so we then knew, we were sure. Well, I suppose we had to look into that. The truth of the matter was that, you see, Kelly threw all Daddy's clothes overboard. His everything, except he was honest enough, he took Daddy's money out, which was about $1,000 in bills, and there was Daddy's watch and chain on that seat, where the people who row the lifeboat sit, because Daddy was lying on the floor, and there was his, well, I forget what else a man has, but there was everything that Daddy had, there was on, but his passport was gone, and all his clothes. The clothes had been thrown overboard. Well, we presumed that this was, that Kelly, after all, he had to change his name, you see, so maybe he took Daddy's passport, which is quite obvious, you see. So when he landed in New York, you see, when the boats had been picked up, they were all, when the Carpathia and these other boats came, it was already daylight. They came upon the scene. They were corralling or getting together lifeboats that were adrift, you see. They gathered them up, and many of the people were dead in the lifeboats, and there were, according to Daddy, so many people bobbing around in the water with life belts on, but they were dead. They were frozen to death. They were all bobbing up and down, and so these big boats that came to the rescue had to see anyone that was dead, of course. They pulled them aboard anyhow, and they threw their lifesaver overboard, and then they laid them out. But the live ones, of course, they took care of right away. Well, apparently when these boats had been rounded up, Kelly must have been, he was a very strong man, stewed or not. Maybe he was in better condition when he was stewed, you see. And at any rate, he had said, all right, he was going to help, and he got out of the lifeboat that he came in with Daddy. No doubt he'd thrown everything overboard, the rest of the sandwiches and well, I suppose everything he had thrown overboard. because the only thing left in the lifeboat where Daddy was Daddy. I said, how come you're here alone? Well, at any rate, this was Kelly had no doubt taken Daddy's passport, and he had landed in New York. They wouldn't search they wouldn't search his bags there, whatever he had, a big red bandana, a tablecloth, then of course, as Daddy said, when he landed in Halifax, they came around and they said, now what's your name? And Daddy said, of course, my name's Mathew Hannah, and because then they cabled it a second time, you see, to London or to New York, everywhere where it's published, you see. So that was why Daddy had been saved once in New York and once in Halifax, because really he was in Halifax. Well, that sort of made Daddy think about this guy Kelly. You see, he said, well, if he hadn't called to me, hey there, cock, you can make it. Come on there, boy. Come on there, lad. You know, because I remember Daddy explaining, and he said that had given me courage. Daddy says I was about to give up. I was blacking out. I could not have gone on. But it was that voice. He called me. He kept calling me. And I guess that was it. Then I got the oar. You know, he was talking about his goddamned oar, and even the oar helped save me, you know, because I couldn't have gone on any further. I could not have gone on 10 more yards. Well, as you know, he got me, Daddy said, in the lifeboat, you see. Well, I suppose that was the reason for the two reports, that Daddy had been saved in New York and he'd been saved in Halifax too, and couldn't have been, of course, the same. There were certainly no two Mathew Hannahs on the boat. Well, anyhow, I suppose Daddy got to be thinking about this man, what he had done, and well, there was a kind of rationalization, you know. The boat was about to sink. There was no question about that. Where the purser was, the safes were opened. The man in charge had gone, and the boat was going to sink. Everything would have sunk with it. Well, Kelly, of course, he knew none of the doors were locked, because this man there said, you know, nothing worked in the Titanic. Everything was done badly, and except he's always said the beautiful things, beautiful carpets and beautiful pictures and the orchestra and all that, but the technicalities, of course, like the lifeboats, they didn't work, and like the water in the lifeboats was no good, according to Kelly, though Daddy says I liked it. It didn't save my life, and you couldn't taste the difference. Anyhow, nothing. That was the Titanic at that time, the White Star Line. So, well, I think Daddy sort of finished his story there, as when Mother told him about the two reports, and well, I guess that was the end. I don't think he said any more, except that, well, somebody asked, there's one thing they asked Daddy about how much would you say that amounted to there, that this Kelly had in this red tablecloth bandana. Daddy said, well, look, he said, he sat there for gloating over these jewels. He kept lifting up that necklace. There were 3 of them. Most beautiful, he said they were the most beautiful pearl necklaces in the world. You see, he used to hang around that man there in charge of the safe, you know, and I guess he knew pretty well what was going on. But Dad says the diamond necklaces were astonishing. He never saw them. He says, well, we said, well, how about, somebody asked him about how much. He says, well, at least $1 million. There's no question. $1 million. So, that was it. Kelly, Daddy figured, he got away with $1 million, but he saved Daddy's life. He offered Daddy a share of the loot, and Daddy said, no, I don't want it, but The only thing he took from Daddy was his passport. Well, he needed that, and after all, it wasn't so valuable. And unquestionably, he saved Daddy's life. So, when Daddy never again told the story of the Titanic, maybe he figured, well, you see, when I was saved, I should have told the police about this gigantic robbery. But the question is, was it a robbery? I don't know how many $1 million, because Kelly only got part, a small part. There were, if you know what the Titanic was at that time, all these lords and ladies and these dukes and barristers and millionaires, going to America, and what they might have taken along. It was a tremendous fortune. Well, at any rate, Kelly got his little share, and he was taking it home to Mom, and with his piano accordion, his beautiful voice, and he had nursed Daddy. He kept talking about warming his tootsies, and kept rubbing him. Daddy says, I can't turn that man in. If the $1 million had gone down to Davy Jones's locker, well, good. It's those people are ill-gotten gains. Well, anyhow, Kelly got his bit, and I can just imagine when the story was ended, because later on I began to realize that Kelly nipping off one pearl, or one, as he called it, bloody big diamond, and living off it like a London alderman. And well, I suppose Mom couldn't have lived long. His mom there in Ireland there. She lived in Tipperary, by the way. The town of Tipperary became popular later on. Well, maybe he could live like he bought Mom maybe a beautiful house, and had to get rid of her wretched cow there that she lived on, and those chickens, and Kelly took care of Mom. Well, if he did nothing else, and the sinking of the whole Titanic, this multi-million-dollar palace and all these people there, and well, Kelly did his bit. He fought for it when he got it. Well, I wonder what happened to him. At any rate, he could never in his lifetime spent the $1 million that the jewels were worth. No doubt he kept nipping them off and selling them here and there, and I suppose when his dear Mom was dead in Tipperary, Ireland, I suppose he went back to Algiers. He told me, Daddy said that was his favorite town. Well, of course, later on I began to know Algiers when I grew up, and so, well, I suppose, I don't know what happened to Kelly, but the reason Daddy never retold the story was for the simple reason that, well, he just loved Kelly.